All right. It's 11:05. We will begin. Thanks for attending the pre-proposal conference. This is an optional Q&A pertaining to the Conceptual Programming and Partnership RFP issued by Friends of the Falls. Welcome to the meeting. If you haven't already, please register your attendance in the chat with your name, affiliation, and email address. That is how we'll know you've been here. And with that little reminder, I will begin. So today, we're going to introduce the team, who you'll be working with on the project moving forward, opportunities to engage and learn more, both pre-proposal and post, and a little bit of the context of the project beyond what you might have learned by reading the RFP, and then a couple of highlights on the call itself in terms of scope and deliverables. Most of the meeting will be dedicated to Q&A. If there are questions, please hold them or type them in the chat, and we'll get to those at the end of the introductory content. So here's where we are in the process. The RFP was released on March 30th. Today is our pre-proposal conference. You'll have an opportunity to submit additional questions after today, up until April 20th, and then we'll post answers to all of those questions by the 22nd. That'll give 3 days prior to the deadline to submit a proposal, which is April 25th. The rest of these dates are also in the RFP itself, and so you can familiarize yourself with those there. Here's the Falls Initiative leadership team. Robert Lilligren, the Executive Director of the Native American Community Development Institute, and Mark Andrew, the President of Friends of the Falls, are our leadership. Carrie Day Aspinwall, who's also on this call, and you'll hear from her, is the facilitator of our Native Partnership Council, and I am implementing this process. So I'm really the project manager. Our Native Partnership Council are the decision makers in this process. And so both the shortlist from this consultant selection process, as well as the work of this consultant, will go before the Native Partnership Council. And the roster of that Partnership Council is listed here. I wanted to take a minute just to introduce you to the site itself. And so I'm going to get out of presentation mode for just a moment. The site address is 1 Portland Avenue, so that you can search it up yourself if you wish. But for today, let me just get into my map. This is Hennepin County Property Information Map. It shows you the parcel outline. There's actually 2 parcels. This parcel, which includes the lock itself, 1 wall of the lock, you have to kind of subtract that. That will remain in federal ownership. And let me zoom in a little bit there. You can see that better. Here you can see the structure of the lock. The top of the lock is this, it's the mirror image of this. That will remain in federal ownership. The rest of this parcel is the site. And this additional parcel here is also the site. To give you a little bit of a view of that in 3D, here it is. It's on the central riverfront of downtown Minneapolis. There's downtown. This is US Bank Stadium here, Gold Medal Park. And if we zoom in a little bit, maybe a little bit less than that, you can see the structure of the lock is quite large. The site exists in this space between the Stone Arch Bridge and the lock and dam. There you see it. That is the falls. And the site continues to this piece here where the road comes in this piece here. And so you can, again, if you just type in 1 Portland Avenue, you'll be able to find that on your own and explore the site in more detail. I'm going to invite Amanda to talk about some of your opportunities for upcoming engagement with us. And Amanda, maybe introduce yourself and speak to this.
My name's Amanda Wiggin. I'm working with Friends of the Falls on communications and outreach with our partners at NACD and Carrie as well. So here you can see the sequence of meetings that we've set up to date between the Native Partnership Council, really on that decision-making and grounding side of things, as well as the general public with the community conversations. That's what we're calling the public engagement events so far. April 12th, we did need to reschedule last week's event, so the new date will be May 19th. So May 19th, May 21, and June 15th are the upcoming opportunities to really hear from the public and become involved in that process. So certainly the June 15th date, we would anticipate the contract would be in place and the consulting team would really be contributing to that event. We also have a series of surveys posted online. The first one is really asking people about their relationship to this place, and we'll be releasing another one soon that's more place specific. Getting people thinking about programming and the work that the consultants will be doing. So the existing content we would certainly share to the incoming team, and you'd be involved in shaping any new content going forward as well. I will post in the chat a link to our newsletter. If you're not subscribed, we'd encourage you to do that so you can get updates about these events in the sequence, and particularly that rescheduled date, May 19th. We'll be announcing that shortly.
Thanks, Amanda. So you can check the chat for that. And for anyone who's joined since the meeting started, please also log your attendance in the chat with your name, email address, and affiliation. Thank you for that. Okay. We'd like to introduce you a little bit to the context of the work. And to do that, Carrie Day Aspinwall, who facilitates our Native Partnership Council, and David Malda, who's the design lead on this project from GGN, will co-present. And please, guys, just tell me next as you need to.
Go ahead, David, kick it off.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. So, I think in terms of context in the process that we've been working through in this project, not your most typical public project, I would say, in a good way, in that we've been really focused on working in a way that's resonant with the Native Partnership Council, working with Carrie and her team to really understand, the bigger role that this relatively small site, this relatively small parcel of land plays in the story of this place and its broader connections through the river. Carrie, anything you'd want to add on to that at this level?
Oh yes, this is a very significant site to the Dakota people. This was historically Dakota territory. They shared with some other tribal entities kind of across the river, if you would, the Ojibwe and Anishinaabe people, whole chunks farther down the river, so that there was a entire communities of Indigenous people all up and down the river who worked collectively, who worked in collaboration around hunting and fishing and gathering. And later on, in this piece, you'll also hear about Spirit Island. Spirit Island was a central focus of these tribal communities coming together and making big decisions, making collaborative decisions. It was also such a spiritual place that women would birth their babies there. Big ceremonies would happen there. So in as much as it may seem like a small site, it was a very, very intricate, important place for our Dakota people and our Indigenous people up and down the river. And again, just due to industrialization, it started to, in as much as the industry was booming, if you would, our river remained. She's still there. the spirits that drive that river are still present. So again, we've got much opportunity here at this site. Go ahead, next.
So here we see an aerial, similar to what Kirsty was referencing. That was the northern big red dot. So we're upriver of Bedote, where the river is connected and really the center of all of this. But the falls, you can see the waterfall itself today is really, only a part of this broader, more complex story of land and water that Carrie was describing. And you see in this view here, that red oval shape is the footprint of where Spirit Island was or is below the water.
Mm-hmm. So this particular project is very unique and I would say innovative in the way that we are trying to understand this place. And so from the very beginning, the Native community was approached by Friends of the Falls in a very, very good way, in a very deep and spiritual way, recognizing that they wanted to center the Native voices in this project, that they would open up the table, offer some seats, offer us the entire table if you would, in centering our voices at this place. It's definitely understanding, creating an understanding and an understanding of the site and what it meant to our Indigenous people. And so it's been a real educational and sharing piece. What was there? What was the significance of everything that was there at the site? The relationship to the site of the Indigenous people that were there. And again, coming together on identifying the values of this project, on, what values do we share and what should guide this project? What should this place mean? What should it be in the future? And again, our Indigenous people view both themselves and nature as an extended ecological family. So we are all tied together. We are all related. I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but it very much speaks to the relationship that we have with the water and with each other. We have committed, as we always have, to abiding by the 4 laws of nature and the rights of nature. We speak for those who cannot speak. That's how I've been told by my ancestors, and that's the charge of my work, is to make sure that we give voice to people and that we find consensus in a traditional way, which means that everybody, we would like everybody to understand, to be able to share and give input on this project, and come to a consensus on the direction and where we're going. That each partner, each person that comes into this circle has a voice and they have a position, and that all perspectives are taken into account. That's those are our guiding principles for sure in all of this. It's always the consensus of the group that moves us forward. Always acknowledging the Dakota principles that they are bringing to the table. Our Native Partnership Council is made up, I would say, of over half of our members are of Dakota descent, and then we have some urban folks, Dakota organizations that are also sitting with us and giving us their input on this. We've had to agree on some priorities, these emerging themes that have been, how do I call it? I don't want to say emerging. These are, the spirit is coming alive, let's say that. and through that immersion, we understand that the river is a spirit, and that water is truly life. It's a place of connection. It's a place of power, and it's a place where we really need to restore a story that was disrupted. Our goal is community alignment. And again, all members will have opportunities to speak. And really what it's called, it's being a good relative. We're going to live here together. We have lived here together for millenniums now. And so again, re-educating ourselves, reintroducing ourselves to one another, and speaking about talking with one another on the importance of the river and what makes good sense for its restoration, if you would, in the future. So centering Native voices. Go ahead, Chelsea. And again,
and just, sorry, Carrie and David, we're actually at our time. So if you could get through these final few slides, I'm not sure how many are left, but so that we can open up the floor for questions.
David can go ahead, because I just talked through all of this language that you see in front of you now. So David, go ahead.
Sure, we can jump forward. Actually, I'll just touch on the framework that go ahead one more. Yeah, just to highlight the framework that we've been working on most recently is really highlighting how this place is as much about an ongoing process of engagement as it is about the idea that engagement would decide what a program is, and then that would become a fixed thing on the site. The themes that you see: restoring a story disrupted, powerful place, building connections, water is life. These have been themes that have really come through the Native Partnership Council discussions. And now we're in that role of exploring how do we think about those themes, that bigger idea starting to fold into this place. Next. And we've taken the idea of the falls, which has been very much sort of, I would say, suppressed and broken down through its more recent industrialization, trying to amplify the presence of the unique qualities of the upper river, the falls itself, and the lower. Next. And you can see this sketch overlay, which really speaks to the character and quality, complexity of land and water that was once here. Again, trying to not restore that physically, but reassert those characters and identities through this project and its ongoing process. Next. We can skip past this. Just important to know, how it's been transformed. That's been a lot of the understanding to date. A lot of research has been done already. A lot of work has been done already to understand how this place has evolved in recent years and what it's meant in a deeper way over a broader history. Next. And again, just that trying to reassert that idea of the falls itself. Next.
Good job.
And then this is where we are now, again, trying to establish that framework, certain kind of qualities, certain really ideas of the ground and the quality of the land that can then guide what is most appropriate for one area versus another. Next. And, working in a range of ways, but really all through this, not just thinking about specific fixed programs, or what are more the connections and relationships that can be formed. Connection building, relationship building has been central to the discussion. So ideas of the upper. Next. The falls itself, this intensity, immediacy, place of connection, portage, where people came together because of the falls. Next. And then a very different quality below into the realm of the gorge, within the space of the river, much more complex, much more intricate, other kinds of experiences and opportunities here. Next. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you both. And we're going to end with just a little bit of the highlights of the RFP itself before going over some of the questions we've already received and then opening it up for any additional questions. So if you've read the RFP, the scope of work lists these tasks of the administration of services, identifying those values, goals, and objectives with your project team, which is present on this call. The information gathering phase, which is really about your outreach to potential programming partners that could be based on some of the priorities that we've heard about so far, things like education, things like site restoration, things that have to do with culture keeping, and you'll learn all about those as you kind of get into dialogue with the project and the Partnership Council. And then task 4, coordination with concept design. So it's going to be really important that this team is fully in sync with David and his team at GGN. And finally, the program document itself and presentation of that work. 2 things I wanted to highlight on the actual preparation of the document is our requirement that it's responsive to NPC guidance, and secondly, that the recommendations are consistent with a 1 to 2 year horizon for some state-funded early enhancements, which won't be the entirety of the project, but will be priority early capital enhancements, capital improvements that we have funding to make now. And then also considering that longer-term full build-out when the project as a whole comes to life. And so just have it in mind as you prepare your proposal that there's those 2 time horizons. The milestones on the right, you pretty much heard about from Amanda earlier in the presentation. I won't revisit those, but there they are again. Another thing that the RFP asks for is visits to comparable places where you might be able to interview and speak to organizations that are operating a place like this, kind of learning visits. And so that would be late in the summer. That might be something that several people, a delegation participates in. Those might be here, those might be other places in the country. And then the 2 work milestones are the completion of concept design in August, and then the conceptual program report being completed in November. And that gives you just a couple months to flesh out some of what's been resolved through the concept design phase, and then begin really buttoning up potential relationships and strategies and understanding programmatic requirements of those priority recommendations. So that brings us to Q&A. And again, I'll just say for anyone who joined the call after it started, log yourself in the chat with your name, email address, and affiliation, just so that we have a list of attendees. These are questions that we've already received via email from the RFP. Someone asked, will non-local consultants be considered? The answer is yes. We encourage all qualified respondents to participate, regardless of your location. The second, we had the question, I serve on the board of Friends of the Falls or NACD. Am I or my company excluded? And this one required consultation with our nonprofit council. The answer is, we're not going to exclude anyone. However, both organizations have conflict of interest policies that board members would have to abide by. There's a process for that. And the other thing that we just want to state explicitly is that neither board has a direct role in either consultant selection or managing this contract. There's a firewall between those 2 activities, and any breach of that firewall would result in that team, the respondent team, including that member, being disqualified. So we have not had any such breaches, but we have had this question. So the budget, we've had the question, what is the budget for this work? We have budgeted up to $100,000 for this work. That would be inclusive of fees and expenses for the 5-month engagement. And finally, we've had the question, our team has multiple firms. How is that going to work in terms of contracting? We strongly prefer having a prime consultant and then any additional firms being sub-consultant to that prime, so that we have one contract relationship, and then that prime consultant is managing payments of fees out to the sub-consultants. Our RFP allows for multi-firm, multi-party agreements, but we strongly prefer a prime. So those are the questions and answers we've received to date, and I'll open the floor to any additional questions that we have from attendees here. And I don't see any questions in the chat. So we'll just wait a moment, see if any questions emerge in the chat, or just unmute yourself and you can ask in person.
Kirsty,
Yes.
will this video, this recording be posted on the website as well as kind of part of the RFP?
We hadn't considered it, but that's a great idea. I don't see any reason why we would not do that.
Hi there, Andrew from Interboro here. Yeah, so one really interesting project and opportunity, so very excited to think about this. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about how the consultant for this phase fits into the work that you've already been doing, and especially since you have a pretty strong team already of Friends of the Falls, NACD, and GGN, trying to just figure out kind of what do you see as sort of the ideal working relationship between all of the different voices that are already involved.
Thanks, and David and Carrie, jump in if you would like to on this answer. We have a pretty robust, and one moment, someone else is entering the room. I just had to admit them. We have a pretty robust series of team meetings, and so this consultant would be folded into that series of meetings, and additionally would propose other ways probably to directly coordinate with our leadership team, and specifically with David and Carrie on concept design and programming relationships, and on NPC guidance and programming relationships. That would be a series of meetings that we would either incorporate into our existing team meetings, or that you might propose as particular workflow, and then we would work with David and Carrie on that. But yes, we do have a really strong foundation, and I think we're at a really good place to start thinking about programming opportunities because of the foundation that's been put into place so far through the council's guidance and the early framework for design. Any additional thoughts on that, David or Carrie?
I would just say that you're all welcome to come to these. I mean, I think it's really important to participate in these team meetings, just especially initially, so that you can get a feel for the work and kind of where we're swirling and where things are at, and where we're going. Each team meeting builds upon one another, and we're usually, I would say, anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 weeks planning ahead of any given community conversation or our NPC meetings. And so it's a lot of information sharing, a lot of engagement with each other to make sure that that our circle is tight, and that we're all singing from the same page.
Yeah. And we did have a new attendee, it looks like, already put the affiliation in the chat and signed in, so thank you for that. And also just want to say this will be posted on the website, so you can see the entirety of the presentation at a later time. Other questions?
If I could, obviously, centering native voices is the kind of pillar of this RFP. But I guess Minneapolis and the Twin Cities is a multicultural place, and I'm wondering what's your view on bringing other voices to the table and incorporating other groups in the design process, in the programming process, and moving forward?
David, do you want to take that? Because I mean, we do have a process for Partnership Council at the center. Really, that's our steering committee and setting the table in terms of priorities and guidelines. But there's also a robust public process taking place, and additional stakeholders at the table. David,
Yeah.
do you take that?
Yeah,
one?
I can. I mean, it's a really good question, and it's an important question for this complex of a place. I'd say what we've really, increasingly appreciated in the process to date is this has been more about letting the story of the land and sort of deeper, more fundamental underlying ideas of what this place is and how it's evolved over time come to the fore. Really, even the fact that as the project's evolved, something that you start, okay, here's this strange wedge of land that's kind of in the river, that's kind of on the shore, that's, you don't really know what it is attached to all of this infrastructure. And to say, and through the process, it's become clear, well, this is really more about the water than the land, which when you start to think about program, when you start to think about design of, public space, it means the questions are very different. And even thinking about it, not just like a multicultural aspect, but multiple species, and the water itself
That's
being,
right.
a client, if you would, or the fundamental, like the most fundamental idea of this project. And once that starts to happen, that framing around, this cultural interpretation versus that cultural interpretation, it doesn't go away, but it changes it, I would say, in terms of its dynamic a bit. So the focus has really been about, trying to get into that understanding of what is this place, how has it evolved, certainly. And then I think as we've evolved the project, it continues to expand and grow in terms of, more voices intersecting with that. But it's a different thing than coming in and sort of saying, okay, everyone have at it, like, let's see whose priorities are most important. We've worked really hard to actually bring it more to the story of the land and water, and then finding intersections or connections within that. So it's not to say that, I don't know if that's a good answer for your, for your question. It's been a complex process, but it's been really meaningful in terms of challenging, I think, a lot of what often become oppositional standpoints right out of the beginning of a project.
There
Dave,
are other. Oh, sorry, Amanda. Why don't you go ahead? Yeah.
I was going to say, if I could add, I think one of our kind of key approaches in a simplistic sense has been, as more voices come in, we're trying to pair engagement with education. So why centering Native voices is so important, and why there are so many diverse views of how we could view this place, and starting there and then moving into engagement has been pretty key to our approach.
Yeah, I think I was going to say there are other parties at the table. The National Park Service has visitor facilities on the site now, and that's going to be something, I mean, we're in continuous discussion with them. And additionally, the park board has park projects that are kind of being built out all around the site. This is in the historic district, so there are numerous adopted plans that refer to the site. But I think what we all embrace at the heart of this is there is a missing piece in the historic district. There are stories that have been well told, and there is stories that have been absent. And this project is focused on, as the name suggests, restoring a story disrupted. And, Carrie actually used to work for the city of Minneapolis, so she has always had one foot in each camp. And Carrie, I don't know if you want to say anything and speak to this question as well.
So I have to say that we remain good relatives. Our Indigenous people remain good relatives. We are happy and acknowledge the gift of this discussion at what should happen at this place. We're happy to share history, knowledge, ceremony, all of it. And it's been very, very well received by the broader community. I worked for neighborhood and community relations and worked across our 71 neighborhoods here in Minneapolis, and have found this to be a very welcome discussion. People are interested. They know what the written history is. They know what they've always heard, but they always realize that there was this missing piece. And who were they? What did they do here? What did they do before we came? And so it's been this real opportunity to share. And we have found more things that we have in common than we do things not in common, and that we desire the same things for the river, and that we feel as strongly as each other that it's an important story to give life to. So it's been really, really it's been one of the best experiences that I've had, because it's so concentrated, and then all of a sudden it's the folks that we've been able to reach across the city has just been amazing. So yeah, it's really very stakeholders, the indigenous people, our African American community, some of our new immigrants, elders, our native elders are just ecstatic about this. They have finally started to emerge. It took some while. Truth and reconciliation needed to happen a little bit. Trust had to be built. Relationships had to be reestablished. But we've done it, and we continue to. We're going to be going out into the Dakota communities themselves, which are, as you know, set a little bit away from the river down in southern Minnesota. And again, they've opened their home up to us, invited us down, and we will be having one of our community conversations there in the Prairie Island community soon. And I'm really looking forward to it, because this is really where the rubber meets the road, to be really in the heart of, in the home with the Dakota people. And so I'm really looking forward to that.
And if you haven't already, I would encourage respondents to watch some of the videos from our past community conversations. There's highlight videos and full videos, and it gives you really great insight into some of what's coming out of the Native Partnership Council in terms of our key themes that David presented earlier.
And if you haven't visited the immersive gallery, oh my gosh, that tells the whole story right there. I mean, that is an amazing piece of work there, I'll tell you, and it does share with everybody the journey that we've been on. And it has been a journey. This is not a project, this is a journey. A friend of mine said that to me one day, and I look back, and it is. We've learned so much from each other, how two very different communities can work and align and bring others with us. This is really a good journey for all of us, and very, very, a lot of grounding right to the river. I mean, and we brought in spiritual people to help us understand what all this means, because there's deep meaning behind all of it for the indigenous people and for the people who live directly along the river. They knew something was missing, and now, you know, again, here we are. So it's exciting.
Other questions? We have about 15 minutes left.
If I may, and I apologize if this has already been shared before I was able to join, but hi, my name is Ella, and I was wondering if you could speak to the various roles of other partners of the NPC, such as NACD, and just where their community engagement is at. Are there active, conversations, obviously in addition to what's currently available to review online?
Robert Lilligren, who's the executive director of NACD, unfortunately wasn't able to join today. I wish he were here and he could present himself. Mark or Carrie, would you like to respond to the question? Mark is the president of Friends of the Falls and formed a partnership with NACD. He might be the best to answer.
Go ahead first, Mark, and then I'll jump in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ella, for the question and for the other attendees of being here today. You know, the original, I mean, if we were really going to go back in time a number of years when the lock was closed originally in 2015, the site was not viewed as particularly as a resource. The city of Minneapolis and some of the business groups made a formal recommendation through their boards that the site basically be converted to a visitors center for the city of Minneapolis. And so it lacked the kind of indigenous perspectives that the Friends arrived at believing that was necessary. And so when we got together a couple of years ago, the idea was for the Friends of the Falls to invite the Native American community to the table, not just as advisors, but as full participants in a decision-making process with a long-term goal of actually turning over the major decisions to the Native American community. So everything we've done has been sort of structured around that, Ella and Andrew and Kate, to the extent that we look at this as a Native-centered project, which diverges quite a bit from the original vision for the site. So we're sitting at this moment in time looking for vendors to come in and to help tell that story through the programmatic elements that are just in process right now. So I'm sure others can add comments if they want, but it was a good question.
Yeah, really good question. And NACD is considered an intermediary organization for our Native American community here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And again, as this project was rolling out, we have access to the Metropolitan Urban Indian Directors Group, which has 30 Native organizations signed to the only memorandum of understanding with our city. There is no other city across the United States that I'm aware of that has such a document. So again, that was a significant group to introduce this project to start garnering support and identifying leaders, Dakota leaders, leaders from our community to join us, to help us with engagement, to get the word out. And again, NACD's reach into our community is very deep, and Robert has many, many connections across both the Twin City area. And in as much as we've probably got one of the largest indigenous populations across the United States, we're small. We seem to be and it's a really small community. So we know each other. We speak with one another quite often, specifically through the MUD group and through other groups. We have state and local connections, national connections. And so the ability to be able to reach out and identify leadership, garner input. I think the most significant piece for the Twin City area was involving the Little Earth community. As you may know, Little Earth is the one and only. We've got a lot of one and onlys here with the indigenous community, and they are probably one of the only indigenous housing corporations here, with over 800 residents, and 2/3 of those residents are led by women. The other 1/3 are elders taking care of grandkids, great grandkids, but there is such a wealth of knowledge there. And again, elders wait till asked. and that's all you have to do is ask them. And they're happy to share. They're very happy to give of their time. And so we did ask, and lo and behold, they started to emerge. And the same thing with the Dakota community elders. Again, you know, it's all about this relationship building. And I think our connections are deep enough where people are trusting of us. When we introduce Friends of the Falls into our community, again, it was an easy ask. These folks are genuinely interested in what's going on. They're at the river. They're genuinely interested in what we have to say and what our comments are, and have not, as Mark said, they didn't just open up seats, they offered the table. And we've been a community that only was able to see the table over there and say, when are we gonna have a seat over there? They opened up the whole thing, and we have this partnership council in place, and they reach far across the geographical areas here of the Twin City. We go down into North Dakota, South Dakota. There's a Seven Fires Council, which a lot of our NPC members are connected to, deep, very deep. And so many Dakota people are watching this project and looking forward to the results. So.
Yeah, the Native Partnership Council is an esteemed group of leaders. I just want to emphasize what Carrie just shared. I mean, as is the team at NACD. So there's just a wealth of potential, you know, by centering these folks, and don't forget even links to the UN.
Yes.
You know, Vicky Lapointe and his work around the rights of water at the UN. It is a significant leadership group.
And we're all here to help one another. Don't forget that. We're asking you to come into our circle, and that means something. That means a lot to us. It really does. Because again, you're joining a team of people with lots of vision, and you know, again, it was this big vision, and all of a sudden it's really coming into clarity. And so again, we're going to add another piece to this, because again, it's not just something that you see and plop down and that's it. You know, there's all this engagement that's been going on, and truly acknowledging people's thoughts and input is important. And I think that's why we're so well received, because people can go, I'm the one that said that. Look at it, it's right there on their board. Or so again, we're really cognizant of the input that we're getting from folks, and everything seems to be lining up. There's some alignment going on, and it's exciting. It's an exciting journey.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you all. This has been very helpful. And one other question, which I noticed, it looked like on your timeline that the conceptual design was likely to kind of happen, or a first draft be done in August, if I understand that correctly. Can you speak to kind of how the, for this RFP, for kind of programming, the work might change sort of before and after there is a conceptual design? And since there isn't conceptual design now, is there a program established? Like, do you kind of know what the components of the design will be, or is that still being worked out?
I think, David, do you want to take a first stab at that? You can speak to before August and I can speak to after, but maybe you want to start?
Sure. So I would say we have been working to shape the values, the concepts that are evolving into a framework for the place. That idea of the upper falls, the falls itself, the lower, the kinds of opportunities that are unique to the water, the way the shoreline works, the way the layers of historic aspects of this land work, that is being guided by those themes in this discussion, this ongoing discussion with the Native Partnership Council. So out of that, I would say we don't have a specific program, but I would say out of that, we do have an idea that the place itself, water, language, storytelling, ceremony are fundamental to everything we've heard to date. And so we're going through that exercise of trying to help people see the opportunities, the potentials that link into what we've learned about the place, what we've learned about the priorities from the Partnership Council, from the Native community, as well as broader, stakeholders. But I don't think our goal is to have, by August, a final set of this is exactly what this is, because, going back to my point about this is really about a place to continue a process. We really, want to keep that somewhat open-ended, and this is always a challenge of fixed physical infrastructure investment. How much, do you fix and how much don't you fix? I think that'll be an interesting dialogue to continue to have. But I think where the opportunity, especially from my perspective on this programming component, comes in is to really build off of that framework and to start to move directly into actual partners rather than, ideas of kinds of partnership that we've heard a lot about, and we can start to say this is where this might seem most appropriate. But I think that it, like a lot of aspects of this project, as you can see probably even from this discussion, it's a lot of back and forth and moving around and refining and refining. We don't tend to just drop in 5 options, pick one. That's never been the approach. So
Yeah, I think the work of the programming consultant will be to help to land some of those ideas in a more concrete way. So I think it's not going to be like you think of it in a typical architecture. We're writing the program, and the functional requirements, and it's going to be a table and it's going to have this many square feet. Maybe we'll have something like that conceptually or diagrammatically, but it's more about, if you think back to those really big ideas that were presented that came right out of the Native Partnership Council, concepts like a place for gathering. As you enter into the project on just a theme like that, it's always been a place for gathering. It will be a place for gathering. Now, what does that mean? I think that's the conversation we're going to have. It could mean anything from, Carrie talking about ceremony to Wakian talking about the global indigenous movement and, how are we connected to that? Those decisions haven't been made, but a big part of the work of the conceptual programming consultant will be to begin to initiate conversations to say, is this something that is consistent with the Partnership Council's priorities, and that we could potentially form a relationship with, whomever is going to bring that program onto the site. And I would say that would be the same for each of those 4 big themes. Another one was a story disrupted. You immediately start to think about living culture, education, interpretation. And so there's going to be opportunity to bring some clarity and focus to those in terms of how does that become a living part of the site, in dialogue with design and dialogue with principals. We've got 2 minutes left. Maybe time for one final question, if anyone has. Okay. Hearing none. There is an email address for questions that may emerge after this meeting in the RFP. So questions from today, as well as any questions received prior to the 20th, will be included in the posting of questions and answers by the 22nd. So you can always stay tuned to the website to find answers or see what additional questions may have been asked. Other final thoughts from Friends of the Falls, GGN?
I just want to say thank you for your interest. We really, really are looking forward to taking another, I don't know, I always look at it as, throwing a rock into the water, and we've got these rings going on. And so to realize another ring emerging in this journey is, like I said earlier, very exciting. And I'm excited for the people, all people that have participated with us thus far. For us to get to this point is really going to be significant because, again, we've heard them, we've acknowledged them, and now to be able to potentially see something, this is going to rock their world. I mean, for just this, you know, I say the little old site that could, you know, from going from this big, huge piece of cement, if you would, to something that's really meaningful and historical, and ties to the original inhabitants of this, of that parcel of land is exciting. So thank you so much for your interest in helping us.
And on that note, perfect timing, Carrie. We are at noon, and yeah, we will sign off. But thank you again for attending this optional pre-proposal conference, and we look forward to your proposals.